Welcome to Caring Matters podcast. I'm Liz Tassone, and I'm with Sister Jeanette Jabour. And Sister Jeanette is a book author. She's a sister of the Adrian Dominican Sisters. She has written a book called Visiting the Elderly. She has facilitated many, over 500 caregiving support groups, so she certainly knows her stuff both professionally, and she also is a family caregiver, so she has experience in this. So she not only is talking the walk, she's walking the walk as well, so she knows her stuff. And one of the things we talked about on part one of this podcast was how important it is to have good communication between the caregiver and care receiver. And one of the things I wanted to ask you about, Sister, as we pick this up, is if you have some just tips on good communication skills that you can share.
Okay, briefly, I would say some tips include facing the person, making eye contact, speaking slowly because it may take longer to process words, remaining calm, being patient. Avoid being overly argumentative. If you don't like what's said, maybe it's all right, unless it's something really bad. Validate the person and validate the response. And I have a story that came to me just today, actually, of a woman. I was in a restaurant, and a woman, obviously caring for, I guess was her mother, brought her in for a meal. I thought, this is great. And the woman, young lady, sat facing the crowd, and she put her mother facing the wall. You know how the booths in the restaurant? And then the daughter got on the phone and talked through the whole meal. And mother, now the communication was nil. That's a bad example, but it's a good example to not do.
Yes.
And mother, I almost went over and sat next to mother so she would have somebody to talk. She never looked at her mother. She didn't talk to her. She was on the phone for the whole meal. So mother might as well have been in her dining room or bedroom alone. That's bad communication tip. Okay. Is that all right?
Absolutely. And what you're
saying... That example came to me just today.
Oh, wow.
Actually, and I don't know why, but when I was doing it, I thought, I just think of that woman. Every time I go to a restaurant, I look to see, you know, if somebody's paying attention to whoever else is there. And lots of times people are paying attention. They put the mother in the middle and have the kids around and the grandkids, and it is good communication. So...
And that's important, the whole eye contact thing, the reflecting back what they said, so you make sure you hear, you know what you've heard.
But the things I mentioned, she couldn't do. Well, she was facing the person, but wasn't even thinking of being calm or patient, and that would be like a conversation between you and I, or mother and I, if I'm in the living room or bedroom or someplace. Okay?
Yeah, very good.
Okay.
And one of the things you wanted to talk about is about priorities of the caregiving experience and kind of understanding where the caregiver's coming from and where the loved one's coming from on a particular visit.
Right. Some of the comments I've heard, one woman said, I've tried to keep Dad's apartment clean and spend much time keeping things in good order, but Dad just seems to want to talk. And she said, my time is limited and it's frustrating for me not to respond to seeing dust on the piano, tables, and floor. And then another woman, and I'll get back to that in a middle, another woman said, Mom and I never really spent much time on chit-chatting. Now it seems she's more interested in chatting than in eating. So those are two examples of things I hear kind of a lot. So it's good to recognize that as one ages, their experience changes and priorities change with it. And one's perspective changes. Dust is no longer important to many people, but the contact with the person is important. The personal contact supersedes all else, in fact. And mom wanting to chit-chat, alleviate her loneliness. She'd rather chit-chat than eat. She could eat when somebody's not there. So try to relax by being present to the person rather than doing things. And I think this is difficult. I don't want to put the men down, but it's probably especially difficult for women who are caregiving because they don't even have time to do their own house cleaning, but they see something in their mother's house that needs to be cleaned, they want to do it. You know? So it might be difficult to just sit and chit-chat.
And they feel like they have limited time, so they just want to get this done and get on their way, and mom wants to sit and talk.
Right.
And what you're saying is maybe sitting and talking is...
The priorities have changed.
Yeah, and that might be more important to mom right now and more important to her care than that.
I think it's important to a lot of people because the personal contact is there. She wants to know what's going on with the daughter, wants the daughter to know what's going on with her, and the dad too. He'd rather chat. He doesn't, probably most men could care less if there's dust on the piano, you know, or on the end table. They never did even when they were younger. Yeah. So why care now? You know, why care now?
Yeah. Okay, so pay attention to the fact that maybe just the visiting part is more important than the task.
Right. And that's the priority with the older adult, with the parent. The priority is the contact. And that possibly changed. It might be very different at this point.
It's a good point.
Before, mother was saying, honey, you didn't dust. Now mother doesn't care anymore.
She just wants to sit with her daughter and chat.
Right.
Okay, good point. What about visiting with someone that may have difficulty articulating? Maybe it's a result of a stroke or some dementia beginning, and so they're having difficulty expressing themselves or articulating. Do you have any suggestions to how to be with that?
Point 1 is being patient. Point 2, allow the person space to come up with words that say what that person wants to say. Sometimes it's very hard to get in touch with what that word is. And by being calm and accepting, sometimes that word may come, but then again it might not. So being patient with what the person is trying to say, the older person, and knowing that maybe if you have an inkling of what they're trying to say, maybe saying a related word would help bring that up, something that relates to it. Something that would trigger it, whatever the intent was, and they may never think about it, and that's okay too. But it's best not to make a big issue of forgetting. I know I don't like it when somebody reminds me, because I do a little forgetting from time to time, maybe a lot. The person is probably already aware there's a problem, and having somebody else notice it only emphasizes it.
Okay, so the more the person visiting can be calm about it and not jump in and allow the time and space for that person to maybe perhaps think of it.
And be happy with any response you get. If you get a response, be happy with it.
Okay.
So those are some tips.
And this is the same with memory impaired, would you say, or is there anything different?
Memory impaired, I would say maybe if you could refer to if it's a relative, you might know the history of that person. If not, it might be wise to try to find out, because sometimes their thoughts go back many years, and you could find a topic or a word or a phrase or something that was their interest at one time, or was their hobby, or pictures, or objects, stories. If a person has reverted to some childlike behavior and ways of speaking, I would say please do not respond in a childlike way. I think it's very important. Mother starts, and then you start. All you're doing is exaggerating that, or raise your voice as you did to your child when what your mother does to you. In other words, treat the person as an adult. Refrain from talking down to the person.
Okay, don't be patronizing.
They have a whole life of experience in them. They're not children. They're not children.
What I hear from you, sister, is that you want to make sure that that person is held in respect and with dignity because of their background and their many years, and maybe they're not as current on, maybe the person sitting here doesn't have the memories or isn't able to articulate or tell you who's president of the United States, but to be aware of them as a person and give them the dignity that that lifetime deserves when you sit with them.
Right.
So what I'm hearing is total respect.
Total respect. And total respect for the person's life. They've had many years here. They weren't born as the children they appear to be portraying right now. That might be a passing thing and it might not be. But they do have a whole life of experience in them. And I think we need to honor that.
Yeah, and draw it out if possible.
And draw it out if possible. It's
Whatever.
good to know something that they did like or bend a lot. Sometimes that triggers some, some thoughts that they could have and elaborate on.
That's a very good point. Thank you so much for your tips on this. I think what you're telling our caregivers is really helpful. What I hear is about being very respectful to yourself and to the other person, which I think is kind of the beginning of any caregiving relationship. If it begins there, if the intention is there, then there can be a lot of good relationships that result, or good times that result as if you're both in that place.
That's good.
So thank you for that.
That's good. And the older I get, the more I can put myself in the place of the elder.
Very good. Well, I want to thank again our guest, Sister Jeanette Jabour, for her insights in the caregiving experience. I'm Liz Tassone. I want to thank you for listening, and I want to thank again our sponsors, which are listed on this care page that you'll see on this web page. You can look over and click on them if you need to. Check them out, and we appreciate so much that they give their money to our sponsorship of this webcast. Again, I want to thank you for listening. I'm Liz Tassone, and always remember, caring matters.